G'day everyone, it's James Davis down here in APAC for Pax8 Academy again, and this time I'm joined by Wim from TopLeft. G'day Wim, how you going?
Oh, doing great. It's a good start to the week. Feeling good here in up in Canada.
Thanks for joining me. I know we've had a lot of conversations in the past, and I'm sure a few people that watch and listen to this have seen us. And we're flipping roles this time. You interviewed me, now I get to interview you. So I'm excited to have you. And I'm just going to dive in. I'm going to ask you a question. You work in the area around project management and helping MSPs be more efficient at that. So, what do you see are the biggest challenges that MSPs face around their project management and project delivery?
There's a lot. There's a whole lot, as we've talked about before. A lot of them are lacking leadership on it, so they're looking for solutions. Um, but it's as we've yeah, a big one I see is just the roles. Is a typical problem is you get a senior technician is promoted into this project manager role, and it's actually not a promotion. It's it's a huge challenge, and a lot of them sink. They don't swim through that because it's like a career change, different skills, mindset. It's more leadership, it's communication, all that, and they're completely missing the flow. Um, the tools are not set up to help them, so that's a huge challenge. And they're kind of blind. Everyone's doing their best they can, and they're plodding along, and they're paying the bills every month. But these people are struggling. Like the technicians are struggling because they can't be ultimately successful. The managers not really 100% successful, and the companies are leaving probably 20% net profit on the line because they're not managing their projects as well as they could. Again, they may not be in the red, but they're suffering there. And there's a lot of things that make that up. Um,
It's huge. That's huge when you start to quantify it that way. And I guess what are sort of the symptoms that you see from that sort of lack of leadership and experience and knowledge in that area?
well, symptoms. Well, projects are taking longer than they should. The client's having to follow up. Yeah, and a lot of status updates. Where's my project at? A lot of promises got to get made. Expectations reset. You get people overwhelmed, overloaded, like engineers overloaded, overwhelmed. A lot of pressure to get stuff done. Like, hey, we got to get this done. We got to build it. We want to build the next milestone. There's the budget they got to watch. Um, People burning out, having to go back to other roles, or ultimately leaving because they weren't successful in that role, even though they might have been in the previous one, but they can't go back to the previous one. Um, yeah, leaving money on the table, as I mentioned. The unnecessary stress. Um, what else comes to mind? Other symptoms. Bad data in their PSA. Like I was just on with a client, and it seems like their PSA has, on the one hand, they would think that the PSA has good data, but when I actually look at it, I'm like, here's your Kanban, and this is like this engineer, Chris, let's say, he's supposedly busy, but I'm like on his Kanban within this swim lane, he's only got one ticket there. Everything else is in the backlog. There's nothing in his ready column. He's not busy, and he's not updating his time and his tickets properly, obviously. So that's a common issue or symptom. I don't know. It's not a symptom of project management necessarily, but just a problem in many MSPs across this industry is just time entry, keeping your stuff up to date, and that's because the accountability is not there. The visualization is not there. It's not easy to do.
Apart from maybe the sort of senior engineer that gets hoisted into project management role, why do you think that why do you think that is the standard culture in a lot of MSPs that their project people don't have that sort of basic hygiene?
Well, they put the senior tech into project management because they feel that they need somebody knowledgeable about the technology itself to be able to have the conversations and manage it. They need to be the expert, the guru. So they get promoted into that, or there's just the de facto. They're using a senior engineer to self manage their own projects, but missing the methodology of project management of what's your whole end to end flow. Um, what's the big what's the bigger picture of the portfolios? Like they don't even think like that. So they're thinking in the wrong terms.
So flipping it a bit, we're talking about the challenges, and I've seen a lot of that too, obviously, and it's a pretty common area of difficulty for most MSPs. What are you seeing for MSPs that do this successfully? What have they got in place that does make it run smoothly and not leaving money on the table, etc.?
What's the whole end-to-end vision of how it's marketed, how it's sold, selling it the right way? This is how we're going to communicate. This is how we're going to collaborate. These are the milestones. These are the things we expect the client, you, Mr. Client, to do. These are the impact when you don't get that to us on time. And how do we kick off a project? How do we transition from sales to project delivery? How do we kick it off? What order are these things done in? How's it delivered? How's it completed? How's the quality happening all the way? How's the billing happening? It's not left to chance. There's nothing ad hoc. It's all planned. It's all templated out. And as a result, it moves super fast through the system. The good ones are learning a key skill, which is reducing the number of projects in play. The fewer you can do, the higher velocity you get. It's just like higher PSI on that garden hose, but just increase the speed going through it. Increasing the speed of the cars on the highway. That's not necessarily adding more lanes on the highway, because you run out of real estate pretty soon on that. But how do we increase the flow? What's slowing it down? Maybe we take out these stoplights and put in a roundabout, but keep it going. And the clients who are doing this, like I've had them on my podcast, and they do testimonials and such, and they're like, our client, like we're getting back to our clients so fast on both service and projects that they're like, please slow down, we can't keep up. Or just say we're going to give you this project, not because that you've done it before, because we've got another vendor who's done it before and they're skilled, but we know you're fast and you're going to figure it out and you're not going to screw it up. So we know you'll figure it out and deliver it in less time, and it's predictable because you set that expectation before and delivered on it. And that's just all because there's a machine that does that. And it's very simple, just visualizing the work, do fewer things at once, do one thing at a time, and on to the next.
Which I suppose is hard for most MSPs when they've got this big backlog. They've got people that don't think holistically, and their PSA isn't necessarily showing them the whole picture because of bad hygiene. Like you just outlined before, having that sort of end-to-end process outlaid from sales to billing and everything in between. It's a lot of work to get that in place, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. It can take a few years to build that out. I think it starts having a vision for it that project should not be a loss leader. It's not just to support the MRR, but it's got to be a healthy part of the business. And they're not bad. Like I know some MSPs are just scared to do it. They're like, oh, we want to get 60, 70, 80% of our revenue should be recurring, and that's where we make our good money, and that's the valuation and all that. I'm like, okay, that's definitely, you want the healthy recurring revenue, but don't let the projects be a loss leader, especially when it's 40% of the business. Like, yeah, I've just been there where we've had these projects that drag on way out, much longer than I ever estimated. Like the worst one was when I estimated at 200 hours and it took 800, and impacted other clients. We lost clients and almost went bankrupt over it. So that's kind of why I got into this whole business of visualizing the work and Kanban methods.
It's critical, isn't it? Like I agree. There's this sort of pervasive thought pattern in the industry that you need to have a super high percentage of your revenue as recurring, but being an MSP TSP, you're always going to have projects. They're not a bad thing, and they should be the cream on top,
Yep.
both ways. What do you see as sort of best practice project department profitability percentages from your experience?
Profitability on it, well, you'd want to hit that similar gross margin that you would on managed services, like that 60 to 70% gross margin. It's the whole 3 times multiple of what you're paying your engineers. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to quantify that in a way that works for a global audience. But if that's all you're doing, like you should be running 20 to 30% net profit.
And and what you've just said before around like the process driven and from the sales to billing, so you're going to achieve that repeatable gross margins from the start, but I guess from your perspective, how do you manage that in between the actual delivery side more successfully?
Delivery is there's a lot that goes into that. Um, Having the engineers, good engineers, is still a very important part of that, or they know the technology, they can communicate really well. Because we've hired people who are good at the technology and they can't communicate or write the emails and talk. Having that communication, having the right project set up in your PSA, whether it's ConnectWise or Autotask, and having that right structure, work breakdown structure, having templates really helps for that. So everyone's doing it the same way. The engineers know where to look. Nothing gets missed. Your admin people who are helping with procurement and coordination, that they know where to look, put their time in, where the hardware is, and how to bill it. All those things got to be in place. You can lose a client over just messing up the billing and communicating on that.
I was going to back you up on the communication thing. I've seen some very terrible technical teams that have awesome communication. The clients love them. And then the flip side, awesome technical teams with really poor communication, and that's the worst experience ever for the clients. So that sort of balance in the team is quite important, that we're communicating and we've got those skills. And I think a lot of MSPs are struggling to hire in those high level project techs because they don't have the processes. So they're relying on these sort of unicorns to deliver it. To your point, like they're getting
Yeah,
pushed up to project leads and management, and they don't even have those skills.
yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking of individuals in some of my teams and other clients is like, yeah, they're good on service work and they can do senior work. They can troubleshoot. They can do a lot of things, but we can't let them manage a client, like manage a migration. Like they need somebody else to fill that in and kind of bite size say, hey, here's specifically what you need to do. Spell it all out. Because some technicians are just not that detail oriented. So they look at a ticket and they go through it. They do a bunch of work on it. Mark it as completed, and you're like, hey, no, you missed. There was a list of like 5 items, and you did 2 of them because they get all excited and they, hey, I did 1 and 2, and I spent the time on it, and mark it as done. But then go back and circle back. Did I actually do everything that was requested and documented in this ticket or the project? So they're good value. It's like we wouldn't um, manage them out of the organization. We wouldn't let them go, but they wouldn't be a fit for the project team. So it's we look at that. Like there's a whole growth path to be in the project team. It's not just the you got to have the skills, and there's got to be mentorship going on there.
So what are the sort of skills and qualities you look for in a project tech?
A lot of the projects are unique. So that's a challenge in the industry, or I don't know, for many of us, I would think, is very few projects. 2 projects are the same. So yeah, because it's not like we do Office 365 migrations every day, every week, and it's the same thing, rinse and repeat. Because most people are on 365 already. Um, but yeah, there's more SharePoint migrations. There's a lot of unique things that we don't do a whole lot. So the engineers they got to think like a consultant, think bigger picture, map it out. Where are they coming from? Where are they going to? What are the best practices? What's the best way to do that? Let's be on the same page as a team, communicate that well. Because there's no real SOP on it. It's like we haven't really done it before, or the last time we did it was like 2 years ago or a year ago, and does that really apply? Um, so yeah, we want to have processes for projects, but sometimes it's got to be a more generic thing, where people are forced to talk and put the project plan together and communicate it well to the client. There's just a lot of unique things going on.
Yeah, I see that too. I don't know. We've had these sort of conversations in the past where it's a lot less lift and shift, and it's becoming a lot more of that digital transformation type project.
Yeah,
And what I'm seeing is a lot more partner to partner plays where the MSPs are realizing we don't have, say, Azure skills, so let's find a partner that can do those sort of projects for us and try and get around some of these problems. So rather than, let's just assume they're running at that sort of 60% profitability range, rather than taking on all the risk and the burden of doing that, they just coordinate with the partner and be the liaison with the client, and then take the 20-30% profitability instead, trying to carry all the resources and the sort of unicorn techs in some way and
Yeah.
get repeatability that way. Um, well, I'm curious as you're talking through some of this. I'll ask you the next sort of thing around that leadership in charge of the project department. What do you see working successfully for different MSPs that have got someone in charge of the department? We've spoken about the project techs that get shunted into it and they're not really suited for it. Who usually are suited for that type of role in the average MSP?
From what I'm seeing, again, I don't talk to every single client and really map that out. Because our clients are at so many scales in TopLeft. Some it's like they got a project team of 3 people and they're kind of self-managing, or they got a senior tech who's doing it, and with the help of TopLeft, they do quite well. And then other ones, they might have 20 project managers and they got a senior PM looking over the whole portfolio. So as they get larger, you're going to get somebody, or either they've got like 20, 30, 40 years of experience, or they've really been just officially trained on project management, and they might have come from another industry or a larger technology player, and now they're coming down into this smaller MSP play. Like most MSPs are sub 10, 20 million. But if you come from an environment where you're managing like $100 million projects, that's a whole other scale. So some MSPs are hiring that sort of talent to say, hey, we need serious help now. We're doing a lot of projects. That's by bringing a big gun. And so they've got the skills, but then the tools in this industry are suffering. So what's the built-in PSA functionality is not really setting them up to succeed. They're like, it's a list of data. There's no visual. I can't see my portfolio. I got to drill in. It's a lot of clicking. I got to export to Excel. Or perhaps they have learned some of the lean, agile methods from working in a software development team using Jira or other tools like that, ServiceNow perhaps. And they're like, I don't have it in this smaller MSP space. And the industry isn't really aware of those methods of running your daily huddles. A lot of MSPs are not doing that today. They don't get the importance of that and the power of doing it. So yeah, these MSPs come from, I guess there's sort of 2 or 3 buckets like that. They're promoted and trying to figure it out as they go. Nobody's got time to go and study PM. Like I've done the PMP course, like PMI Project Management Institute Agile Certified Practitioner, and I've mentioned it in newsletters and different things and brought it up on webinars, but I think only one other client has done it. And it's not like it's that much time. Like, was it 50 hours or something? I think it was less than 50 hours to get it, but it's people's job and they don't do the training on it, is my point.
And that probably comes back to what you're saying before. It's the career shift, and they don't. A lot of those project techs don't see the value in that type of bureaucracy and that structure, because probably as an industry we haven't really valued that kind of training and certification either, because we've just promoted based on experience, and it's that natural transition from, oh, you do the help desk for a while and then we step you up, and project lands like the glory part of our business. And I think we're just going to your point earlier, we're just putting the wrong people in the department and setting them up for failure a lot of the time.
Yeah. So something we're doing now internally in our MSP is just being careful with that new manager promotion, is not just dropping them into the deep end and letting them swim, but start with a lower title, smaller scope of responsibility. Or even before we do that, it's like, let's give you some opportunities to try this out as let's say, as a technician, is just a little bit more responsibility on some project. Saying, hey, let's let you handle this kickoff call. You plan it out. What would you present? Present it to me, then present it to the client. And just a bit of mentorship before saying, okay, let's put you into a project coordination or an assistant project manager role. Is make it a 2-year plan. It doesn't have to be just 1 week. We're going to write a letter and promote and give you another 10 grand, and now you're the project manager. But give them a training plan, because there's other things that come in. If the PM would typically be the manager of that team as well, like doing one-on-one check-ins, performance reviews. There's a lot of other things going on that nobody gets trained on either. Like, we don't get it when we go do your 4-year bachelor's degree. You don't get the people management skills at all.
Mm.
So we're giving that to our team, and even looking at rolling that as a TopLeft offering as well as new manager training, is looking at some of the employment standards, the hiring, the team management, running meetings. There's a lot that comes into soft skills, people management. How do you have a coaching conversation with an engineer? Um, and then, yeah, some of the Kanban agile tools as well. So I think I think it fills a big gap in the market to do that. We need it internally, and we can partner with a good trainer to deliver a lot of this content. Um, but people want a workshop to work through it, think it through it, um, go back and implement. Because reading a book, like, very few people can implement that. They need to work together, some accountability, some homework, talk through what's going on, reflect, implement.
One of our courses we deliver for instructor-led trainings around the introduction to managing project delivery, and it's one of our most popular ones because there's not really much help out there for MSP project managers, um, and and we're not most MSPs are never going to hire a career project manager, which is very different to someone that's just managing the delivery, compared to like what you were discussing around managing a portfolio of multiple projects on the go. It's a very different skill set and mindset. And you mentioned a role there that we hadn't touched on before, the project coordinator. What's sort of the difference between a project coordinator and a project manager?
Coordinator would be more looking at perhaps less on communication, perhaps less technical. Think of the equivalent like a service coordinator in your service team. Like, they're not the service manager, they're the service coordinator. And in smaller teams, like, you may not even need a project manager. Like, if you've got a good, if you have a technician an engineer who can communicate well with clients, they're good that way, verbally and written, and they can write proposals, and kind of like they're your sales engineer to your senior project engineer. Is they may not need a project manager. They just need a coordinator to help with scheduling tickets, making sure stuff is assigned, moving forward, bringing up issues in a huddle if stuff is blocked, asking technicians to put in their time. Just kind of this data hygiene, keeping the PSA clean. They can communicate with the client, asking them for, hey, where's this at? We need this from you. Engineer Bob asked you about this last week, or did you get a chance to do this? And provide a very powerful support position there, because I don't think we've talked about that previously, is when do you need a 100% full-time project manager? It may be further out. You might be at like 4 million revenue. It might not be when you're just a 500,000 or a million of revenue.
Mm.
So kind of, and what a lot of people would call themselves a project manager, they're really just a coordinator. Um, so I haven't dived a whole lot into that, but that's something, yeah, just as we've talked about in the last year, that came up. So
You mentioned the daily huddles a few times now for to managing success. What does that actually look like?
it's really simple. This is this came out of, it's like Kanban. It came out of Japan with all the lean thinking, theory of constraints, all of these things, like 40, 50 years ago. And is the idea of doing a daily huddle. So this would happens on the shop floor in thousands of businesses around the world, in hospitals. Actually, I've been at the local grocery store and I see them doing like a daily huddle. And they almost kind of like shut down the, not, they don't quite totally shut down the store. You can still check out, but I could see them doing like a 10-minute huddle. Like, hey, this is great. So basically, it's getting together. You might share some wins from the last day. Um, you're stuck, so everyone goes around. They share your win, what you're working on, your number one focus today. What are you stuck on? Do you need help from anybody else? And that's about it. And you go around. It's really quick, and it's not about solving issues. It's just identifying what's neglected, what needs some love, who needs some help, and then you after the huddle, you can connect and go one on one if you need to. So and it really helps to pick up the pace on things, so things are not waiting an extra day or two or five because somebody's spending too much time or they're spinning their wheels. They can get the help, and everyone's there. The managers, the boss, everyone's in that meeting. Get a lot of eyes on it. So it's great accountability too, because if you say, hey, this was my number one thing today, and tomorrow it's the same thing, we go, oh, what happened? Um, And but a lot of things, it's a simple practice. We call it a ceremony, and but it forces. It's like going to a chiropractor. Just from adjusting somebody's neck, you straighten out your whole body, right? Because it goes all the way down your backbone, and that I think that's happens a lot with the huddle as well. Is or daily stand up is it forces you to have good data. Your time is entered. Your tickets are up to date. The notes are there. Operating with all those parameters that the team has agreed to honor, coming prepared. Um, so I obviously talked to many hundreds of MSPs, and their problem is not so much that they need another tool; it's like they're not using the one they got. Like the data is not there. So if you actually use it the way it was, maybe even set up previously, they were, but they've slipped. Just use it, and this highlights that with the huddle, and then having the right visual. I think that the Kanban format works really well for that because it's all in one screen or easy to scroll through. So you're not having to go through 10 different reports. It's not a table, it's not an Excel file. Very visual, and the things that matter are popping out. Things that didn't have time entered, that are sitting too long, were not responded to. So that daily huddle, very powerful. We've got, it's actually one of the top blog posts on the website that I wrote like 5 years ago. And you'll see a picture of us around in our previous office, our previous office, because we've now moved like twice since then. But we had a big like 65-inch LCD screen on the wall, and looking at the Kanban board. So it's one of our top blog posts still. Is that, and it's huge in software development. They all do it. Scrum, they do a daily huddle of making sure stuff is unblocked. What developers need to pair up and go sort stuff out. Happens in marketing teams. Yeah, all over it. So we do it in all of our companies, all of our teams. Finance team does their daily huddle. Ops team, each of the MSPs has their own huddle going. They really wouldn't miss it. Um,
Why do you think most MSPs don't do something as simple as what you described?
Very good question. Again, just before we started recording this podcast, I was talking with a client who's hasn't been doing it. And I'm like, if you would do this, this would transform how you're doing. Because again, there's like, we're not really making that much money on project. He said that with like 20, 15 project engineers. He's like, yeah, we pay the guys a lot of money and there's not really that much profit left over. I'm like, if you did this, it would completely change it. And I think it's um, from what he shared, they need the courage to basically mandate it. This is what we're going to do. Set a challenge. Ray, we're going to do this. This is the way it's done. We're doing daily huddles. Here's the reasons. We've talked with other companies. We've talked to TopLeft. We read the books, and we got to be doing it. So just bear with us. Let's go through it. And at the first bunch are going to take longer because your data is not good. But as you go through it, you improve your data. You improve how you lay out your visualization, so you see what matters in that huddle. You're not having to search for it and dig into it. So I think one, it's just that courage. They don't know that it's a good practice, so it's a bit of ignorance. And then two is the courage to actually do it, and then the consistency. Because if you're starting at different times and you're missing it, and you lose all the momentum. It's got to be same time, same place every day. So I remember like pre-COVID, we would do it at 9:29 a.m. Not 9:30, but 9:29, because otherwise people around it, right? And they're getting their coffee and they're showing up 5 minutes late. But we want people. You got to be impeccable on when that it's happening and the start time, and not letting it run over. Even doing a hard stop, saying, "Okay, there was 8 people here, and we only got through 6 because Mary was talking too much. So tomorrow we'll try better." Yeah, just we've been doing these for 10 years, daily huddles. So it's just what we do. Um,
I I like how you mentioned their courage a few times, and we've spoken quite a bit about like the glory of having the project techs, and we feel like we need to have this unique skills there to deliver projects. And I think what you touched on there with courage is a lot of this hygiene. We're too afraid to lose the text instead of driving through that process and behavior that actually gets the projects delivered. And we let a lot of bad behavior slip because we think they're doing all these great results. And if they're not really profitable and we've got a huge backlog of projects, from my experiences, the data doesn't actually usually line up to what the perceived reality. is because they're not doing the behavior like you said of looking at the data daily and what's the progress and how profitable are we, and not driving simple things like time entry to give us the data of what's going on. And I think I'm sure I'd be curious to hear from your perspective. Is one of the things that you hear a lot from project teams that they're super busy, they've got no time to do anything? Is that a common thing you hear?
I don't hear that anymore. Um, used to be, but then we're like, no, it's part of doing the job. Like, I've made that clear for many years that part of doing the ticket is putting your notes in and your time is part of doing the work. Um, and I've seen that people, even the most busy, they can still be really good at their timesheets. So it's more of a personality thing. But I do see that some people, um, sometimes I'm just thinking of one individual, is very good with the work he does. It's good quality. Clients love him on site, on the phone, email. He does good work, but it's kind of like borderline spectrum kind of thing of autism. So it gets very involved with his work, and then it's just the time stuff falls by the wayside. So what we ended up doing is having the service coordinator spend like twice a day with him and help him get caught up with tickets, hand it off to the other teams because he would be like Velcro. All the tickets would be stuck to him because he's helping the next customer. The phone rings and then he would grab it. So we ended up rerouting the phone calls, kind of putting a ring fence him a little bit, protect him so he's not taking on too much work, and then getting together with him 2 or 3 times a day to help him update the time and just be there. So sometimes it takes a bit of a one-on-one approach. Um, but yeah, we create dashboards and metrics. We use Grafana for dashboards. It's like a bright gauge, which is a bit more flexible. And so the technicians can see that their time going in against the rest of the team. They can see because we've got targets across the service team and the project team for the month. And obviously, if they're not entering the time, that messes up the utilization, all of that. So that's very visible on LCD screens in the office, or now they're all remote, but they can very easily see that. They look at that in their huddles as well. How are we doing on the metrics? Keeping that visible. So it's not hidden until the end of the month. So getting on it every day. This coordinator is watching it. So we have a lot of checks and balances to help with that time entry. And then making it easy. So through TopLeft, they grab the ticket, work it, put their notes in, done, all from TopLeft. It's a lot of options. But yeah, keep on it. Lots of training.
You sparked me with the mentioning Grafana and metrics. What would be some of your t top key metrics that you'd look at to measure success of projects?
I would look at profit is always one. I've set higher goals on the hourly rate. So is the client happy? Which is sometimes a bit hard to measure as a metric. Client's got to be happy throughout the project. So I'm kind of struggling a little bit with that one. But as an MSP owner, yeah, it's the profitability. And it depends on the type of project. So if we look at in Crafty Penguins, which is our Linux MSP, we do a lot of these discovery projects or paid projects for potential clients. They come in that way, analyze their stuff, give them a detailed report on what we find. That could be 20, 30, 50, I don't know, up to 80 hours on that. And we're looking at how many of those convert to recurring revenue. And right now we're sitting like 70 or 80% of those convert to recurring revenue. So we're kind of looking at that. It's basically a paid sales engagement. We can't give that time away. So we're profitable on that. So yeah, looking at, are we on track with the budget for that, and are they converting to a recurring client? So kind of a repeat business out of that. But I would say that's a key one is based on this project, the client's experience on this project, would they do more projects with us? So I think that's a key one that's a marketing budget, is customer service, project excellence, and how they feel through it, how are they communicated, was it done in the budget and the timelines we gave? No surprises. Nobody wants surprises with downtime or interruptions or all sorts of things. And that earns referrals and repeat business. And I've just seen so many times, the quicker we get a project done, the quicker they give us more. Because we have a list of projects that we want to do for them, like a backlog we've talked about. But I've seen time and time again, they have their own internal list of projects they haven't even brought up with us until we get the current stuff on deck done.
That makes sense, doesn't it? It's a trust-based thing over and over and over again. The
Absolutely.
more that you
Yeah.
do it well, the more that they will buy into whatever you're giving them, or they will engage more with you because they trust what you're doing. I think that's an awesome point. I know we could talk about projects all day. We're coming up to wrap up time. We've covered a lot of different um, little conversational pieces through this session. And I guess I'd like you to reflect on what would you like people that have been listening to this, what do you think the biggest takeaway, if you're going to give them anything to walk away in action from this session, what would you want people to take away?
Well, I guess there's data and there's tools and there's people and mindsets. Like the simple one is tools, like keeping your data in your PSA. Yeah, there's all other great tools like Monday.com and Asana and all that, but you're creating silos, not necessarily solving the problem. So keep your data in the right place. Use the right tools for the job. There's the process of managing these projects. There's the people, having the right people in the right seats. Being really clear on that is what is your account manager doing versus a project coordinator versus your engineers, etc. But perhaps the number one would be the mindset, the methodology. How are we looking at how we do work? And always thinking about that. How do we improve how we do the work as part of doing the work? And yeah, some of these historical methods don't work so well, and trial and error doesn't work so well. There's great models to follow. So we got to work on our own mindset, and then influencing, convincing, or perhaps challenging and just deciding for other people to follow with that. To say, trust me, this is my role to make this decision as the project manager or the operations manager, and we're going to go with doing daily huddles, visualizing our work. We're going to minimize the work in progress. So yeah, immerse yourself into these things. Like there's two books we always recommend. There's the Phoenix Project, a whole novel with characters around IT and DevOps, and it teaches a lot of these methods, theories of the constraint. So highly recommend that one. MSP's brought that to my attention like 7-8 years ago, and I've been a big fan of that book and the Phoenix Project. And the second one is Making Work Visible by Dominica de Grande, and so the second edition of that is out. She's got a lot of resources on her website as well, podcasts she's done and videos, and she's got a whole course around that. And that's how do you visualize your work, which could be how do you hand off from sales to delivery, from completed ticket reviews, how do you manage your backlogs, how do you run your daily meetings. A lot of visuals there, and some of them are very simple. You're like, wow, this is obvious, this would be very handy. And so the book is visual, lots of examples and stories, how to do that, doing your daily huddles, all of that. So yeah, it's just a mindset and investing into that, because that's what I see where clients that are successful is they read the books, they did the work, and they changed how they think. Sometimes they already had started that journey before they reached out to us, and sometimes afterwards, because we send them the book and they read it and like, oh wow, this is actually good, and they buy it for their team. So it's mindset over tools, and you don't need fancy tools.
I think there's some great advice there, and I've seen people when they have changed their mindset and put in place what you've been talking about today, the profitability and the dramatic change in the business is amazing. You can go from barely profitable to a high performer with very, very happy clients with these sort of changes, and it all comes down to that mindset, like you said. So this has been a great session. I hope it's helped the people listening along today and seeing us chat, and hopefully I'll get you back on again in the future, Wim. So thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. I enjoyed it, James. So until next time.
Thanks, mate.